I got like a burp stuff or something.
You want me to punch it?
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Backwards Heimlich. Sit still there.
Just punch me in the back.
Punch him in the
Wouldn't that
chest.
be an aggressive hug if it's backwards Heimlich?
I don't want to think about all that. Okay, so we were able to get through. Does anyone remember how many verses we got through?
One, you've said it 12
We got
times.
through one verse. We got through one verse somehow. That's also the verse I had the most amount of notes on, so we got lucky. Okay, what were some, and I gave you some space here. I know some of you took notes from that. If you want to put that under seal, censor, and silence, oh my. I just wanted to be creative. That was my attempt.
I like that.
Thank you.
See,
I did that on the
you
last
are
set of
artsy.
notes I made for you guys as well. With seals, trumpets, and bowls, oh my. So, okay. So let's dive in. We'll go 2 through 5 and then discuss. And I'll read 1 again. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Another angel who had a gold censer came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all God's people on the golden altar in front of the throne. The smoke of the incense, together with the prayers of God's people, went up before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and hurled it on the earth. And there came peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. All right.
Just to top it off, we're just going to give you an earthquake too.
Yeah. It's like the little seasoning on top. So we see that number 7 appearing again. 7 angels, 7 trumpets given to them. Does anyone remember the significance behind the number 7? Why that keeps coming up in this book? Completion.
Yep.
Completion of what?
It's a great
We're taking it the next step. Completion of what?
Well, at this level, not the end times.
At this level, not the end times?
Yeah, because there's still a lot of the book left.
So, if you remember back when we started chapter 6, there's a few different views on the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls, and how they relate to one another. So the question is, just because it's presented in this order that we read it, does that have to mean that after the final trumpet after all the seals, all the trumpets happen in sequence, and then all the bowls happen in sequence? Or is it maybe there's some overlapping between some of these events?
Possibly.
Possibly. We're actually going to talk a little more about that tonight. But before that, number of completion. So it's a book about judgment, so judgment reaching its completion. I think that might be.
Just as a timeout, what would you think about giving a 2-minute synopsis of Revelation? I think for Kristen and for Laurel, who are both first-timers here,
2-minute synopsis.
2-minute synopsis. What do you think?
Of the entire book?
Of kind of Revelation, the
Up to where we are now.
yeah.
Up to where we are now? I can't do that in 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I can.
What about 2.5?
I want to turn it over to you guys. 2 minutes. Who thinks they're capable?
Sin is bad, therefore it must be judged and punished. So this is God's
Are you sure?
plan.
Wait, you're giving Romans right now.
Hold on, I'm not done yet. So this is the punishment for those who don't love Jesus. Duh, because these are the people that murdered Jesus. Well, not Jesus, but Jesus' people after the rapture. Anyways, okay, now you got me out of order. Stop it. So the world gets really, 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 really bad. And God is like, it's the time for some wrath. And then he raptures basically all the people that believe in him. And then he pours out a whole bunch of wrath on the earth. And through this, people were like, oh my word, I was so wrong in what I believed. And then they were like, God is real and I believe in him, and then other people get mad at them, so then they murder them, and then you have to wait for the time of the fullness for everyone to come, and then yeah, but
You're giving
they
me
might.
really good systematic theology right now.
Thank you. I took
you're
that
pulling a
class
lot.
8 years ago.
You're pulling a lot. So, okay. So
Just say
it's a vision.
Revelation 2 and 3. Revelation 2 and 3. What are that? What is that?
Those are the churches?
Letters to the churches.
Are those real churches
Are those real churches?
Yes.
Okay.
that
Yeah.
existed?
Way back then.
Some believe it's future churches, but we think it's probably actual churches that were around when John was writing the letter, okay? Chapter 4, we turn a corner, and then now what we're going to start seeing is we're going to see a vision of something that happens in heaven, and then we're going to see something on earth. And then something in heaven, and something on earth. And something in heaven, and something on earth. And that's the way it's going to be, really, throughout the rest of the book. When we talked last time, what kicks off the tribulation? The abomination. Actually, no, that's the middle. That's the middle. The beginning of the tribulation is what? It's still the Antichrist. Well, there's the rapture that happens, and then the Antichrist opens. He comes out, but what does he do? Yeah, he comes out as he comes out. As
He
who knows
appears.
what. He comes out as who knows what. He comes out. He signs a peace treaty with Israel. That's what starts, and then the midway point of the tribulation is what?
The abomination.
The abomination that causes desolation. That's when the tribulation period is kind of the midway point. And as I've said, the first half is bad, and the second half is worse. Yeah. So it's not like there's a good part. It's just the first part. There's still a lot that's not being done because the Antichrist hasn't exposed himself yet fully as to who he is.
So when Trump signs this peace treaty with Israel, what does he become?
Trust me, there have been people who have accused Trump of being the Antichrist, that's for sure. But the middle point is there. Then the
Remember that joke I
last
said
half of the
last week?
tribulation is the bowls of judgment. That's where
in
it's
the second
all
half.
really, really bad. So what Brandon's saying is when you look at the thing, you've got 7. Okay, there's 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls.
Oh, you broke it.
Da. You're supposed to get yourself
Well,
in the floor for that. Twang. What show was that?
Why'd you write it upside down?
Keep talking, John.
So what Brandon is talking about is as we talk about the seals that happened in the previous chapter, chapter 6, I guess 2 chapters prior, we talk about the seals that happen. The seals, some say you have 7 seals. The 7 seals are done. 7 trumpets. 7 trumpets are done. 7 bowls. 7 bowls are done. What Brandon's talking about is you can see there's difference of opinion here as far as does it go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or is it possible that you're reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? The 7s maybe all line up, but the 1s and the 2s and the 3s and the 4s and the 5s maybe not. So this is the way he's drawing it here.
This isn't exact because I don't have my chart.
An exact science?
Yeah.
Will you state what this is called again?
State of confusion.
This is repetition or modified repetition. This is not the exact lineup I have. Yeah, we're going to see some things today, though. As you get through the seals, with certain seals, you notice there's some similar things going on with certain trumpets. And then maybe even some of the bowls line up with some of the trumpets and a seal. Similar events happening. Some people have noticed these patterns. So, as to say that what's happening is all of these things that John are seeing are in sequence. Instead, it's something like, think about a telescope. Like that's not fully zoomed in yet. So you start here and you have a really big picture. And that's probably what the seals are describing. Then you zoom in a little more, and it's the same events happening, but the trumpets are describing some of these events in more detail. Then you zoom even further in, and then the bowls describe more detail within certain events. That's one of the views. I don't have it lined up exactly how that would be.
Right.
Does that make sense? So it's almost a narrowing.
Yep.
The thing is, for a lot of us who are much more Western in thinking, and I love that you brought that out in your sermon Sunday. Two different Greek words for time. Does anyone remember one of them?
Chronos.
Chronos. Which one's that?
Chronological.
I just know that.
Regular.
Ticking of the clock. Yeah, time moving forward in sequence, because that's how we think. That's how we measure things here. This Bible study ends at 8:30, so we're expected to be done at 8:30. That's how we never are. But there are things like that. Then there's Kairos, which is, do you remember the exact definition you gave? Because the one you gave, opportunity is one of the ways I've heard it, and there's another way. And it's like the timing. I mean, yeah, opportunity would be. So like saying the right thing at the right time in the right circumstance. That idea, yeah, the sweet spot, or...
Yeah, think about a comedian. A
Yeah.
comedian can tell a joke at a certain time, but his timing of the joke needs to be really important. It's not a matter of 1.2 seconds as much as it is feeling when to give the punchline, when to say that stuff. So that's the idea of time and time.
So
Kairos
Kairos.
is opportunity, or the right time, sort of.
Yeah, so
The fitting
like
time.
it would be, it's usually used in rhetoric. So if you're talking ethos, pathos, and logos, do you guys know what those are if I say those? Maybe if you took an English. It's logic. Pathos is feeling, emotion, and then ethos is credibility. So if you take any speaker, they use all those three elements. The one that never gets talked about is kairos, which is also the timing in which someone says something or their placement of certain things. When you look at ancient literature, they're usually not worried about chronology. For example, when you look at the Gospels, the way certain things are told, it's not necessarily chronologically told. Especially when you look at John's Gospel versus other ones, because there's certain events that you're like, wait, that's the other Gospel describes this sequence of events. Why are you doing it in this order? That's because they're trying to serve different purposes. So with Revelation, if that's the case and it's all a book on judgment, starting with some very okay, here's some broad strokes, judgment happening, narrowing in, giving more detail, narrowing in, giving even more detail. That's one of these other views on how these kind of things relate. So I want to point out a couple of things. We'll look at that in a minute here, but let's start with, let's just go into that while we're on that topic, actually. I gotta find where I have this written. Give me just a sec. Okay. Will someone read 8 verse 5, please?
Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and hurled it on the earth. And there came peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake.
Okay. So that's at the end of the 7th seal. Will someone read Revelation chapter 11, verse 19? I'll read it.
I can do it.
Thank
Then
you.
God's temple in heaven was opened, and within his temple was seen the ark of his covenant. And there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and a great hailstorm.
Okay. And then
And
next,
voices? Is that in the King Jimmy? Oh,
That's Queen Sarah.
then let's look at Revelation 16, verse 18. And this is the 7th bowl.
Then there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, and a severe earthquake. No earthquake like it has ever occurred since man has been on earth. So tremendous was the quake.
So,
can you imagine?
so either there's 3 earthquakes happening in this, and all these grand events of destruction and they just happen 3 times in a row? Or is it that this is one giant thing happening? John's describing it 3 times to really drive the point home. Hey, things are getting bad. And then we get taken back again and describing these visions in more detail. So,
Why they name it 3 different things? Seals, trumpets, and bowls.
why name? It's a literary device. I mean, if we're... So we talk about the scroll and the seal being brought off it. I mean, very important document, okay? Can only be opened by one, the Lamb. So God's sovereignty. So God's the one who initiates judgment being poured out. Trumpets, and we'll look at some Old Testament passages on this. Trumpets are also sometimes used at judgment being executed. So it's another emphasis or focus on judgment from the trumpet. And then bowls. Think about God's wrath being contained in this thing. We think about like the outpouring of the Spirit, like there's a pouring there. Okay. Instead, it's a bowl of wrath being poured out. So it's this very they're all things that show some initiation on God's part and judgment following it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So why necessarily those 3? I see that correlation there, but that's not to say that God couldn't have done something else there necessarily.
It's just 3 different.
They're
terms,
cultural
similar.
things that would make sense at that time, for sure.
And it's still possible. I mean, there's legitimate people who believe these are 3 separate things.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it's not
Yeah.
a matter of this is the be all end all. It's
No.
just these are ways of looking. But when you look at it and you begin to see certain similarities, it makes you go, okay, are these separate or are these different descriptions of the same thing?
And even
So-
the way that each of these sets are set up. You talk first about the 4 horsemen. There's a grouping. The next, which is the first 4 seals, the next 2 seals are a grouping of an event. You get a break in the text where we get the 144,000, and then we get the final seal. That same thing happens with the trumpets.
So it's a set of 4
Set of 4, and then 2, and then 1.
bowls.
You get to the bowls, the pattern gets broken a little, and it's just each thing happening.
Okay.
So there's a lot of the, and we do have brains wired for patterns, or how are we trying to make sense of this thing? These are different tools and ways that people have. I find, so far, as I've been showing, I'm more convinced that I think the last 7 for each probably do line up, especially when you get to the very specific language of like peals of thunder, lightning, earthquake. It just seems so like, why keep bringing up some, I granted in the second one it says hailstorm, and that seems a little, why is that included? But
But you're saying you feel that each part of this text in different chapters is
It's
talking
like
about
layered.
the same thing.
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
Or elements of it.
Yeah,
At
right.
least the
Elements of
number
it.
7 is what he said. Okay.
So let's, okay. Who wants to look at trumpets in the Old Testament when they're used?
Let's go.
They're very different than
So
trumpets today.
I will just give you guys a few of these, but I do want us to look at 2 of them. So the first one that I'll just give you, we don't have to go there, but they're blown before burnt offering in the Old Testament. And if you have a verse to reference later, if you go back, that'd be Numbers 10:10. Numbers 10:10. And trumpets are blown before burnt offering. John's going there to check me. You want to read that one out loud?
Also, at your times of rejoicing, your appointed feasts and new moon festivals, you are to sound the trumpets over your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, and they will be a memorial for you before your God. I am the Lord your God.
So not always a judgment thing, as you can see there, but there's an instance. They're also done at feast. If you go to Leviticus 23, verse 24, don't know if you want to read that one too, or
I was looking at a bunch of trumpets
oh,
here.
you were looking at more
Yeah.
trumpets.
A lot more trumpets.
And
Numbers 23, what?
well, 23 verse 24. And when we think of trumpet, do we all know what kind of trumpet's being talked about?
Is it just the horn?
A shofar. Shofar.
what?
It's not the trumpet that we think. No, it's not like Louis Armstrong.
And it's not like a bugle either.
It's not like a bugle either.
I always pictured a bugle. So
Ram's
what is it? We need a
horn,
picture
ram's
of
horn, shofar. So that would
Ram's
be
horn.
what would have been used.
Funny story. So I'm in the airport in Israel, and we're getting
they're
ready
selling.
to fly back. And over on the edge, over against the edge, there was a bunch of Hasidic Jews.
Oh yeah.
So they're the ones who are all black and white with the little curly cues and everything. So they were there in the corner, and you could tell they were getting ready for something, and more kept coming. This was probably over the span of an hour, and finally, after they all gathered, we were waiting in line to try to get our tickets and everything. It was frustrating. Anyway, we're just waiting and watching all this stuff, and finally, one of those guys pulls out this big ram's horn, starts blowing his ram's horn in the airport.
Yeah.
While we're waiting to get all of our tickets. And I'm like, oh, only in Israel. Only in Israel are they going to blow a ram's horn in the airport while everybody's standing around waiting. So,
That's my type of.
I
party.
still
all
totally
sing
missed
to
it.
the
What is this thing supposed to
a
look
shofar,
like?
it's a ram's horn. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ram's
okay.
horn.
I guess I totally missed that.
Yep.
So
See,
what was the reasoning behind that? Just
it's
It's an
all,
attention getter. I'm sorry.
It worked.
they would blow the horn, and that's the thing that he's going to get. They would blow the horn at very specific times. Like for instance,
That's all I got.
Pathetic.
Now, in this particular case, these were silver trumpets in Numbers 10. The Lord said to Moses, make 2 trumpets of hammered silver and use them for calling the community together and for having the camps set out. When both are sounded, the whole community is to assemble before you at the entrance to the tent of meeting. If only one is sounded, the leaders, the heads of the clans of Israel, are to assemble before you. When a trumpet blast is sounded, the tribes camping on the east are to set out. At the sounding of a second blast, the camps on the south are to set out. The blast will be a signal for setting out. To gather the assembly, blow the trumpets, but not with the same signal. The sons of Aaron are to blow the trumpets. This is to be a lasting ordinance for you and the generations to come. When you go into battle in your own land against an enemy who is oppressing you, sound a blast on the trumpets. Then you will be remembered by the Lord your God and rescued from your enemies. As if God's feet.
Forgot him.
Oh, dang it!
There, that's right there.
Oh, they're going to battle. I better do
Yeah,
something.
good thing they blew that trumpet.
That's right. That's
Were
right.
ram's
Someone
horns
snuck
used
into the camp
on
and stole
Jericho?
it. Like,
Yes, they
Yes.
blew trumpets.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just
So
had to
the
put some
yeah.
connection to it.
So I was going to mention Jericho. But
oh, I was thinking about that.
Yep. So Old Testament. So we have at feast as Leviticus. They're also used in circumstances of calling for repentance. It's mentioned in Isaiah 58 verse 1 and Jeremiah chapter 4 verse 5.
What was the Isaiah reference?
58 1.
And then Jeremiah.
4 or 5.
And then also the bringing of the ark in 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel 6, verse 15. They're also mentioned there. But I want to get a little more narrow than that. Just because why not play with numbers since we like to do that. Specifically, 7 trumpets are mentioned at like 3 other instances in the Old Testament. That there are 7 trumpets being used. One of them is Jericho.
Yeah.
So if you want the verses, Joshua 6:4, Joshua 6:4, and verse 8.
You remember the VeggieTale version, and they're covered in slushies, and out come the peas, and they whip up these horns. They're like 14 times longer than their bodies, and everyone just starts wailing, and the horns are playing.
Joshua 6:4 and then verse 8.
Yep.
March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. And on the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the people will go up, every man straight in. And then verse 8. When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed them.
7 trumpets. We also see the telling of bringing the ark into Jerusalem in 1 Chronicles, chapter 15, verse 24.
23.
24.
Thank you.
So we see that there. And we also see 7 trumpets mentioned at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem in Nehemiah. Yeah. Nehemiah 12:41.
Nehemiah
12:41. Unless you want to read Chronicles. I'm trying to give reference because I put too many references in, but I don't know if you guys want them all half the time. So
I got Nehemiah back. Those are Nehemiah.
Nehemiah was left out of that book.
I
Then
got
I mean-
Chronicles. Oh,
you got
Nehemiah 12:1. These were the priests and Levites. Oh wait,
12:41.
12:41. As well as the 2 choirs that gave thanks, then took their place in the house of God. So did I, together with half the officials. 12:41, you said?
Nehemiah.
As well as the priests. Eliakim, do you just want me to... Oh, okay. Eliakim, Maaseiah, Miniamin, Micaiah, something, Zechariah, and Hananiah with their trumpets.
How many of them are there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Good job.
But then it says, and also these guys.
Apprentices.
It doesn't say anything about their trumpets.
Because they didn't have trumpets.
Maybe they didn't have trumpets.
Mention
you
them.
were the choir.
Number of completion again. We see it Jericho bringing the ark back and dedication of the wall. Okay. So there's some Old Testament examples of trumpets and that number 7. Did you want to read the verse in Chronicles, Jackie?
No.
Is that what you're? Oh, what was did you have your hand up?
No way. There's
Ah,
so
you've
many
been-
funky
you've been-
names out there.
We're good.
I'll do it.
That's why, just because
Oh my God.
I will give a lot of references, we don't always have to read them all, unless you guys want to.
I'll read
I
the
just-
funky
There are
names.
7 people and then 2 Dorothy.
All right, that's going to do
Okay,
it.
so that's going.
Shebaniah, Jehoshaphat, Nathaniel, Amasai, Zechariah, Benaiah, and Eleazar. The priests should blow the trumpets before the ark of God. Obed-Edom and Jehiah were to be the gatekeepers for the ark.
Good
You're
job.
That's what I just make up names.
That's what I said. No,
So-
I'm good.
So we see it in the Old Testament. Do we see this idea of trumpets related to anything in the New Testament outside of Revelation? Does anyone else mention them?
3 times, not that ain't it.
Does anyone else mention trumpets at any circumstance that you can think of
Are you asking?
in the New Testament?
He's
Are you
checking the
Googling?
Google.
Googling it.
He's asking.
No, I'm not checking the
Can
Oh,
we
no,
see-
he's
just
checking
say
his
in
Bible app.
Revelations?
Outside of Revelation.
Oh, darn it.
Hebrews?
Hebrews, and the sound of a trumpet and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that no further message be spoken to them.
Okay. We see it in Matthew 24, verse 31. We see it in 1 Corinthians 15:52. I'm not reading these yet on purpose. And 1 Thessalonians 4:16.
What passage is that about?
What are all those passages about?
1 Thessalonians, for the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a cry of command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the sound of the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ who will raise first.
Ooh, that's nice.
Matthew 24, what? 30?
24:31.
1 Thessalonians.
That was 1 Thessalonians 4:16. Is that not the? I wasn't thinking rapture.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not. I'm
Okay,
not
okay.
relating
I thought
rap.
you-
No,
okay.
this isn't a rapture thing.
Okay.
You're a good dispensationalist. I'm proud of you. Eschatological judgment, end times judgment.
Yep.
all three of those passages are trumpets are mentioned at end times judgment. Seems fitting that they would come up in Revelation, the book all about end times. There's a common theme, trumpets at the sound of judgment. So there's your cultural tie-in. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay, I think we're good there. We can move on from the trumpets, or from that section, unless anyone has any more questions relating to verses 2 through 5.
So when it says the prayers of all God's people, does that mean of like all time, you think, or just the ones of those that were martyred that we were talking about in the last chapter?
Yeah, I would assume those who were martyred.
Okay. And if anyone didn't know what a censer was, I typed it into Google Images. It's the thing that the priests swing in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
I thought he spelled censor wrong.
That's funny.
Only in the NIV, of course.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay. So
I picture that
Yeah, I
scene,
do.
by the way, that Revelation 8:5. I picture it like in Gladiator, where they take those pops of fire and they just chuck them into the woods, and she just erupts. And I picture this fire from the altar, and the angel just throws it down and hurls it onto the earth, and then we think of a censer like this. He just throws it down. Who cares what that's going to do? But the heavenly censer, that's a whole nother story, Fills that thing up, and it's bad news down here.
speaking of Gladiator, John,
Oh, yeah.
Gladiator 2 comes out next week.
That's right.
Is anyone excited for that?
No, Wicked comes out.
On the same day?
I think so.
Wicked.
Gladiator 1 was very, very good, so Gladiator 2 should be better.
But by the way, if anybody wants to go,
Thank you.
Did you officially change it?
We did.
Because I had
We
sent
did.
the text message out and you didn't tell me.
when did you send? I thought you were supposed to send it Friday. Supposed to go out on Friday. Anyway,
I never got a text.
we're changing
Oh,
it.
that's good.
So if anybody wants to go see Gladiator, we're getting Gladiator 2. We're getting a group of people to go and all go together.
When?
Friday night.
Got plans already.
Oh, you do? Okay. Friday night,
This Friday?
November
Oh
22nd.
no.
November
Oh,
22nd.
Amy, this is for a trip.
Friday, November
22nd.
22nd, and we're doing it at 5:30 because then the plan after that is to all go out and get some appetizers or pizza together afterwards.
That's payday.
And then discuss.
Yeah,
Discuss.
You're gonna be free.
I'm free.
Are you
Send
gonna
me a
go?
calendar invite, John.
Okay.
Are you
That's
meeting
like
there?
3 days in the month. And I'm not
I mean,
You'll get more details tomorrow.
You'd be down to do it, Beth?
I hope so. I have to look at my
Theater,
calendar.
Well,
I
we
need
found
some-
out
I need some
celebration
job
over at
time.
Rivertown.
That'd be great.
All seats are $8.99.
Oh.
Where?
good or bad?
At that's good actually.
Well,
'Cause,
it's because they haven't redone that theater yet.
right.
So until they redo that theater.
But they're
there's
still
seats.
comfy seats. They're just not recliners
That's
or
okay.
whatever.
I'm
Celebration?
okay with that.
Celebration. at
Celebration
Rivertown.
Cinema at Rivertown.
Rivertown Mall.
Rivertown.
Okay.
yeah.
Do we have to
5:30.
sign up to buy the tickets? Or we buy them
Yes.
ourselves?
Nope. We're Kevin is arranging all that, getting a block.
Kevin
And,
Miles.
Kevin Miles is, and so if you let us know, we'll get you down, and then
Sign up link is in the bulletin under the men's section.
If we want to go out afterwards, just
Oh,
let
we
us
get to do a
know.
men's event?
It is a men's event that is being opened up.
Yeah, we're opening up our fun event to
You're
the
opening
women.
up to the other.
Front line is going progressive.
Like,
Mike is so upset.
All right, well, I'm coming cropping next time.
It wasn't long enough. That's why I wasn't there.
One time
3
I
hours.
showed him that. I won't do that
We're
here.
getting my stuff out.
Okay,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
so just wanted to get that plug in at some point tonight.
It's a weird rapid
I'm
trip.
working on it, Amy.
That was intentional. We meant to do
I
that.
love it. I think I can do
Hey,
it.
John.
Okay, so back to the text because I do believe it or not, I want to try and get through chapter 8.
you can do it, Brandon. You can do
So-
it. I know you can.
Okay. I don't believe in myself.
I don't think you can.
I have more notes on the censor unless no one
180,000
cares.
I care about the
You're good. You're
censor.
good.
Yeah.
I want to
I'm
know.
just imagining that the stink in heaven is so bad that that's why they have to burn because of the stink coming up from the earth.
No, it's
And it's just coming up, and it is so bad that they have to burn incense to cover up the stink.
You ever talk to Will Hess?
I know that that's not true, but it's just what's going on in my head.
He's kind of described the temple like that in one way.
Oh, yeah, because of all the murdering.
Because of all the death in the temple, I would believe that.
Well,
No,
on
no,
the
a different
earth,
thing.
the-
A different thing.
Yeah.
The temple here, when you think of the earthly temple, it would have been a very
It would have
stinky
been
place.
awful.
Yeah.
Burning
With all of the
everything.
Hot,
animal, the
every
death,
day,
the
all
carcasses, the burning. Oh my god.
So in regard to incense, does anyone up here burn incense at all?
I did.
Okay, it's
a
not-
long time
I go to
ago.
It's not that
Thailand.
common in our culture.
Is that when you were in the
not
drug?
Christian culture, but other culture.
Exactly. Back in the
I'm
college
sure I've
days,
been in
right?
many houses and that's how it was burned.
So in our culture, incense isn't something that we
Jen was toking
typically use, unless maybe, I mean, the friends I know that did use it, they're they're usually using it to cover up a different smell.
Mine uses it for spiritual purposes with the universe.
Oh boy.
Are they also using drugs for those spiritual? Okay.
What do you
I
mean?
actually like the smell of some of the incense. It smells
Kelly.
good.
Okay.
Some of it.
Remember?
So there are three ways.
It wasn't
There are
very
three.
good.
Do I just keep talking? I'm going to listen to Steve. There are three ways that incense was offered in the Old Testament. So I will. So burned with the grain offering, and that's mentioned in Leviticus chapter 2, verses 1 and verse 15. Leviticus 2, verse 1 and verse 15. And there's these two phrases. They're used in the temple. It generally always used in the temple. Outer incense was offered on the censer, so a long-handled, very like that, more similar to that wavy kind of thing you're thinking of. But it was not placed on an altar. But you take the live coals off of the altar to burn the incense. So that's one method that they also did. That would be Day of Atonement kind of stuff. So it would be used with Day of Atonement. Leviticus 16, verses 11 and 12. Leviticus 16, verses 11 and 12. And then inner incense was offered on the golden incense altar as part of morning and evening offerings of a lamb. That's mentioned in Exodus, actually. Exodus chapter 30, verses 7 through 9. So when we see this imagery here of incense and an old going on the altar, which of those three things does it most resemble?
Wow.
He took it and he filled it from the altar, so that's outer one?
Inner. The inner one. Because it's offered on the altar. With the prayers of all God's people on the golden altar in front of the throne. So it's offered on the altar.
Oh.
So this, and I know I hammer this here a lot. There's so much pulled from the Old Testament in this book. Like, insane amount. And also some of the apocryphal books, there's a lot of imagery from that, but being that we don't have those books in our Bible, I'm trying to not quote those a lot, unless you want me to eventually.
We're not Catholic.
You can
The
always
what
bring
books?
us those books.
I could.
So there are books that are very popular with Jewish tradition and in Jewish culture, but they are not considered scriptural canon.
Okay.
So
Like the
Think-
Maccabees.
Okay.
Like,
Right.
yeah.
books that they would view as profitable but not inspired by God. And that would be even common to the Jewish people at that time. Oh, they might view Maccabees as more inspired, but a lot of scholars would call it.
The Pope didn't approve them.
Yeah.
A lot of scholars would call
Council
the
of Nicaea
Maccabees
didn't.
like Jewish propaganda. So from their end on their revolt during that time, they're worth studying. There's a lot of good stuff in them, but I do prefer to spend time in the canon out of that. So these prayers being offered, what kind of prayers might they be based on what's happening in this book? If it's prayers of the saints.
You already answered that.
Prayers from...
End of the suffering.
Yep. So if you want a verse to cite, Revelation 6, chapter 6, verses 9 through 11. So like imprecatory prayers. You guys know what imprecatory prayers are?
No.
How do you spell that?
Imprecatory. 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 Does anyone know what those prayers are? John?
Good job,
John does.
Pastor.
It's a good thing.
I can look up the word.
Wait, I have one in my Google map.
You don't have to look up the word. I'll just tell you.
Google Maps.
They're like prayers for judgment on others. So when you read verses, I'm forgetting the psalm, but where David's talking about throwing babies against rocks.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think David wrote that one, but there is a psalm talking about skidding the babies' heads against rocks of your enemies. Anything like that is an imprecatory psalm, something praying for judgment on your oppressors. It's a weird thing to think about. I'm not doing this rabbit trail. Never mind.
You can at least ask it.
Okay. Because I went to... Should we, as Christians, today, this side of the cross, pray prayers like that?
No.
But they're in Revelation. That is in our New Testament.
It's kind of.
Sally has declared, no, we cannot.
You can't do that.
Why?
Why not? I have.
Why?
Yeah. I know. I was there.
I mean, maybe not throwing babies' heads against rocks. I mean, that's a bit
Definitely
much.
not that.
But you think about what David prayed. David prayed, God, you go kill my enemies. You avenge my whatever. Vindicate me.
Key thing, though, what side of the cross was David on? It was before the cross. In light of the cross, is that something that we should pray?
Because you're asking us to
No,
pray
you're
revenge.
heaping- you're heaping
We're
full,
in a sense we are praying, but the saints seem to be doing this in Revelation. Does that make anyone a little uncomfortable?
Nah, they were martyred. It's all good.
I won't lie, it does make me a little uncomfortable. Here's why. We have this focus here on, at Frontline right now, Grace Positive. Put that in. Does that seem like a really gracious thing to be praying toward another human being? God, judge them harshly. I struggle with that.
I just can't see how you can say, pray for judgment on other people, and especially bad judgment, not good judgment.
No, I think it is a little different to pray, God, this person's going down a dark path. Please bring them to a point of surrender.
Yes.
I think that might be a better way of reframing it.
Definitely.
The thing that I said...
But John had a really good answer earlier. Okay.
I said to Brandon, when you think of David, what did David go through? Mm-hmm. I mean, some of the stuff that he underwent from people was really bad. You think of some of these Jews who watched their parents be murdered in the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. What would you be tempted to pray about your captors?
Destroy them.
Would you be wanting to pray? Yeah, some of those things, and yet, it's very interesting. Romans 12:17. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everybody. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone, not just those who are nice. Then he goes on. Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave rooms for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. So praying a prayer that tells God how he should take revenge, is that bad?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, is it different to say how you should take revenge
Whispering
versus
it, though.
taking revenge? Though?
Pray.
What's
Is
that?
there a difference there?
Yes.
What's that?
If you're saying like saying smash those babies' heads against the wall, since that's what we're talking about at some point, versus
God is.
take vengeance on them
He's got
and not specifying how you do it.
Yeah.
Is there a difference?
Well, and I think what you see from David is you see this expression that is just so overcome with he is being chased down, threatened, tried to be killed over and over again, and he feels like everybody's against him, and he's just like, God, I need you to wipe them out, and I'm going to tell you what to do. But when we get to the New Testament, when we see this, it's hard, you're hard pressed to find anywhere where we're told to tell God how to take judgment, take revenge. Instead, it says, on the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals in his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Kill them with kindness.
Kill him with kindness.
Romans, what did you say?
That's Romans 12. I read 16 through 21.
That all being said, me mentioning uncomfortable with this idea, I guarantee if someone were to hurt my wife, I would probably be praying a prayer like that
An imprecatory prayer.
toward whoever did something like
Think
that.
about all the girls, all the boys that are
Yes.
trafficked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely there. I've said this before, and people look at me like I'm weird when I say it because I say it weird. We, the collective we crave the wrath of God. It's a weird statement.
Yes.
We crave the wrath of God. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we crave it on ourselves, but when you see a horrible act happen, your immediate thought is, God, where are you? God, judge them. God, deliver them. Give justice. That would mean God putting his wrath out. So it's a weird thing to think about, and something I've kind of wrestled with. We do crave the wrath of God, whether we want to admit it or not. And then we try to act
We
like
just crave
avengers
it on
ourselves.
others.
Yeah, we crave it on others, and then want mercy for ourselves.
Didn't David turn after he got his humanity, smite him, Lord, out? Didn't he turn it into more of a positive ending?
Oh, some of them, yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah, a lot of them. There would have been more of a redemptive feel that you saw throughout it. Like he was just really, really mad, and by the time he got to the end, he sees it.
Yeah.
But some are just kill him, God.
They're very wrong.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing wrong with feeling those emotions.
Okay. I'm going to read through verse 12
Oh,
of
Revelation 8,
Revelation 8.
6 through 12.
Yep. So then the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared to sound them. The first angel sounded his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled down on the earth. A third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain all ablaze was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea turned into blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star blazing like a torch fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark, and a third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night. Okay.
So does this mean
Lots
it's
of
not
thirds.
like
They destroyed 3/3 of the earth.
3/3?
Well, a
Oh,
third,
they're
and
adding
a
up the
third.
thirds.
A third of these
third of
things
all
of
things.
earth and cosmos.
So
Maybe
does
they
this
hit the
mean not
same
necessarily
30.
that 1/3 of the sun
Right.
is like, but it's just 1/3 of the
So-
time?
So I'm thinking like
Before-
we took out the Atlantic Ocean, it was disappeared.
So it's
Before
just
we
like-
focus,
Gone.
There's only
before
2/3
we
of
go deep into the numbers and the math end of that,
But then it said 1/3 of was with that.
let's.
Right, that's
Would have been good.
It's
Let's
not
think.
like 133% less.
Let's think
bright.
about all this imagery
Yeah, I think so.
being used here. Okay? So we see
that's the way I read it.
trumpet, hail, fire mixed with blood,
Where is it?
hurled down on the earth, the burning of things, the sea, blood, darkness.
'Cause
Does any of this
third
imagery
was
seem
struck.
familiar?
a third of the moon was struck. A third of the stars
Plagues
was
Plagues
struck.
of Egypt, yeah.
So that
Plagues
a
of
third
Egypt.
of them were darkened.
Plagues of Egypt.
So they were hit
So
or
with the
destroyed.
first one,
And
now
a third of
granted,
everything is-
these first
dark.
4 judgments definitely mirror Exodus
That's what I
chapters 7 through 11. They're loose parallels, so they're being played with loosely. It's not like verbatim and exact and all this, but the imagery is there. So for the first one in 7, that's the 7th plague. In Exodus 9, verses 13 through 35. That's the 7th plague. So hail, lightning, thunder.
Isn't it interesting that hail, which is ice, is mixed with fire, which shouldn't that melt the hail? You know.
I think of it more like a flamethrower, and then they're like, ta-da, confetti, but it's all hail instead. So it's not necessarily the hail is on fire. It's just like, why am I burning, but there's also hail, and now I'm wet, type of thing.
Whose blood? Whose blood is it mixed with?
That's the thing.
Blind
Mixed with
blood, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
universal
Blood
donor,
not
of course,
burned
because
up
they're
in
going
the
to need
fire.
it.
It's mixed with blood.
yeah.
So,
We will never know, probably.
so we have that mirror with the 7th plague. The fire and the blood, that might be an allusion to something else. Joel 2:30 and 31. Joel 2. Why don't we read that actually? You know what? I'm not going to make it through all this.
Didn't
So-
think you were.
I believe. I want you to know I was really confident that I would be able to.
I had no faith in you.
No way.
It's us. Come on. You need to lower your standards.
But they're already so low.
I can just say, Ben would have been able
I
to
would
do
have
it.
got
No
through it
problem.
all.
But we would have been
I'm sorry, I'm not
Bury
Ben.
the head and go.
Only
I like
because
you more.
then it starts reading and you don't quit.
Ben is just like, no, we're not going to talk about that.
No rabbit trails.
I look
Joel,
at
what?
I look at it this way. You guys pay me, so if we
Joel.
have to go on rabbit
My
trails,
dad.
Joel, what?
okay,
2.
I got it. Joel
That's
2,
the
30 and 31.
Hail
yeah.
and fire mixed with
All right.
blood.
I'll read starting in verse 28. And afterwards I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days. I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. For on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there will be deliverance, as the Lord has said, among the survivors whom the Lord calls.
So there's possible allusion to that. Hail, fire mixed with blood. That whole passage, Joel 2.
That rings.
If we had more time, we could take probably even 15 minutes just on that section as it relates to this. Because this will come up again.
The theme of the book of Joel is the day of the Lord. That's
Yeah.
the theme of the book of Joel. So
So-
the day of the Lord is the reference to when God is going to, like maybe you've heard the expression, oh, he'll have his day in court. Mm-hmm. Maybe you've heard that expression. That's the idea. It's a kairos thing, his day. It's the day of the Lord. And so the theme of Joel is all about the day is going to come when the Lord's going to strike and he's going to do what he's going to do. Which is really interesting because Joel gets quoted in Acts 2.
Yep.
Acts 2, when Peter gave his speech, he gave his speech to all the people who were there. And he quotes Joel, and in fact, right here he says, this is part of what he quotes. And he's telling them, this is the last days. So why hasn't Jesus come back yet? If you're a dispensationalist, you understand. The reason why is because he offered them the kingdom, Ephesians 3.
And
They rejected it. And so what does God tell Paul? He says, I'm taking Israel and I'm setting them aside. Not permanently like Sally's church teaches. Not to pick on Sally, but anyway. But I did it. But yeah, but you look and it's like not a permanent, but it's set aside for a time. We're dealing with this age of grace, the dispensation of grace. During this time, there's no difference between Jew and Gentile. But the day will come when God is going to take Israel off that shelf, bring them back in, and then this fires back up again. When Joel, I think, will have prominence again. So,
Eschatology is a lot of fun. Also frustrating. Also,
You said take them off the shelf. Take the shoes off
yeah,
the
yeah,
shelf,
that's
mention
right.
about-
Yeah, that's
All
right. That's right.
does anyone remember the event when that's decided?
What event for what's decided? Brandon?
Jesus standing at Israel being set aside. Why the kingdom was,
Oh, Stephen stoning.
yeah, stoning of Stephen.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Okay. I know. So next week I will not be here.
Boo.
I'll be in a different room here,
You'll be helping with youth group.
helping with youth stuff.
Once in a while.
I'll finish 8. We'll get into 9 a little bit.
Unless you have a sidebar and then I can finish it the week after.
No, I can finish 8. That's fine. We'll keep going.
Okay. The week of Thanksgiving.
Bury my head. We're going.
The week of Thanksgiving is a busy week for many people.
Conference week.
Family coming.
No one's
For
busy
many,
during
no.
No one is.
Do we want to meet that week?
Well, here's the thing. I have family.
He has family in town.
I have family that's coming in from out of town.
I do as well.
Mike does.
Apparently I do
No
too.
Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
No Tuesday before
Tuesday before Thanksgiving.